All right, in this video, we're going to talk about cycles of matter, or what we call biogeochemical cycles. Bio meaning life, geo kind of land or the environment, and cycles, things cycling between the living and non-living parts of the environment. So energy flows through ecosystems while matter cycles through the ecosystems. You can kind of see that in our graphic here. Energy comes in from the sun, typically through the producers, primary, secondary, tertiary consumers, so on, and then the cycle then it starts all over. But matter, there's a limited amount of matter on Earth, and it gets reused, and the nutrients get reused over and over. So matter flows from one trophic level to another. Elements are recycled within and among ecosystems. So again, they're called biogeochemical cycles, and they're powered by the flow of energy. So energy flow is what drives these cycles. So what are the things that allow these cycles to work? So there's 4 different processes that we're going to talk about. The first being biological processes. So these consist of any activity performed by living organisms, some things that living things do that cycles matter. Photosynthesis, cell respiration, eating food, eliminating waste. They occur in the biosphere, the living part of the Earth system model. Geological processes, volcanic eruptions, formation, breakdown of rock, major movements of matter within and below the Earth's surface. Again, things that happen with the land. They occur mainly in the geosphere. Processes that cycle matter again can include physical and chemical processes. Cloud formation, precipitation, the flow of running water, the action of lightning, all play roles in different biogeochemical cycles. These occur in several parts of the model: the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and the geosphere. And then human activities play a role. Mining and burning of fossil fuels, clearing of land for buildings and farms, cutting and burning and replanting of forests, and the manufacture and use of fertilizers all play roles in these cycles. The human activities are represented by the outermost ring on our global change diagram. It can drive changes in all 4 areas. You can see that on our diagram here. So again, movement of elements, human causes. So again, atmosphere, geosphere, biosphere, and hydrosphere. So we're going to start with the first cycle, the water cycle. So there's a limited amount of water on Earth. Most of it is salt water, which can't really be used by living things. Only a small percentage of it is usable by living things. So there's the atmosphere and the water, or water vapor. Sometimes that falls from the atmosphere to the ground through precipitation and some of it seeps into the ground. Some of it stays in what we call surface water. Some of it goes down into the soil, into the rocks, and forms groundwater and aquifers and things like that. We have some runoff, ends up going in lakes and rivers and streams and eventually into the ocean. We have evaporation from surface water. Water vapor from the surface condenses into clouds through evaporation. We also have transpiration, where groundwater is taken in by plant roots, and then it's released as vapor from the leaves of the plants into the atmosphere. So we got 3. So we got our reservoirs of the ocean, the groundwater, and the surface water, and the atmosphere. We've got the process of runoff, precipitation, transpiration, evaporation. You can see the transpiration is a biological process, whereas the others are physical, chemical processes. We have the nutrient cycles, one being the carbon cycle. Carbon is important because all organic molecules contain carbon. So again, we have some biological, some human, some geological, and some physical chemical processes. So all 4 processes involved in the carbon cycle. So carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. Some of that carbon dioxide comes from fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. Some of it comes from through the forest. Dissolved carbon dioxide in the water that's put in there by cell respiration. We have carbon stored in the carbonate in rocks in the soil. So biological processes basically atmospheric carbon dioxide is used by plants for photosynthesis, and then when the plants give off gases up through cell respiration, it's returned. Some of it, when things die, ends up as fossil fuels stored in that reservoir. Geological processes, you got sediment down in the bottom of the oceans and lakes. You have carbonate rock. When it breaks down, it releases carbon into the atmosphere. Physical processes include, again, chemical reactions, things like that. And human activities, burning of fossil fuels and deforestation. The nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is important because living things need nitrogen to make proteins. Now, nitrogen gas is actually the most common gas in the atmosphere. About 70% of the atmosphere contains nitrogen gas, or is made up of nitrogen gas. But most living things can't use nitrogen gas. It has to be converted into something else. So we have different processes that are involved. So we have the big store here is the nitrogen gas in the atmosphere. In the soil, we have nitrogen that's being converted into usable forms by bacteria that live in the soil or live in the nodules of roots and convert these processes. And we have some dissolved nitrogen in the water as well. There's two important processes. Nitrogen fixation happens two ways. Bacteria can convert nitrogen gas into ammonia or other things which then can be used by living things like plants, and then when plants get eaten, that nitrogen gets transferred on. Or lightning can do some nitrogen fixation as well. But again, this is a cycle, so we have to return some of that nitrogen back into nitrogen gas. That's for denitrification. We have bacteria that convert nitrates into nitrogen gas. And then the phosphorus cycle. Again, there's some biological, some human, some geological processes going on here. Phosphorus is important. Again, some things like DNA, it's in a lot of proteins and so forth. So one important thing to think about when we think about nutrients is that there's going to be some nutrient that living things need that is going to be in a limited supply. So we call that a limiting nutrient. Any nutrients whose supply limits the productivity of an ecosystem. That could be any of the nutrients, not just the ones that we talked about in the cycle. But typically that nutrient is going to limit how much energy, how much biomass can be produced by the producers in that ecosystem.